Hello and welcome to Fire in the Belly. Today we have myself, Mighty Pete, and we're joined by the Jeff Cohen. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to you, sir.
Hey, thank you so much. And thank you for calling me the Jeff Cohen. There's, at last count, over 2 million Jeff Cohens in the world.
But
And
you're the Jeff.
so that I am the Jeff Cohen, I feel special. I never get that.
Own it. That's what it's all about. So you have 2 million or 1,999,000 people named after you. Congratulations.
That's right. They all came after me.
You're the chosen one. I love it.
You're great. Thanks so much.
Well, listen, welcome to the show. So Jeff, tell us, who are you? What do you do? And where are you from?
Oh, gosh. So I'm an entrepreneur, and I have been my whole life. I talk a lot about, in the book we're going to discuss in a minute, my personal life and my journey. So let me just say in a nutshell, I am an entrepreneur. I am a business coach. I am a writer, an author, and a speaker. And I work with CEOs and small and mid-sized businesses that are interested in growing into the new culture. So there was the old culture before the pandemic. Now there's this new culture that's showing up. And it's funny, the way it's showing up is like people are really, really triggered over the way they've been treated in their jobs. And now you've probably heard the term the Great Resignation, right? The reality is it's people really looking at their lives and saying, hey, what do I really want out of life? And, I've worked with over 300 CEOs and helped them shift their company's culture from this old restrictive model to the new one. And basically, inside of that, created opportunities for their team, for their people, for them with their families. And it all starts right here with me. Mm. So that's who I am in the world. Why I do what I do is because my wife and I are foster resource parents, and we stand for every child having a loving, caring, secure environment and home so that they can grow up and be extraordinary adults. That's why we do what we do. Everything else that I do supports that. And like I was telling you in our pre-conversation, Pete, currently we have 2 children in our home that we're fostering. And it's the most rewarding thing that you could ever do as a parent.
I'm sure it brings its emotions, right? It's there's a lot there, but I suppose at the same time, maybe this is something you realize this is the roles and responsibilities you play as playing that part in the child's life, right?
It is 100%. But I'll tell you, a lot of it comes out of my past. We all have one, right? There's always the stuff that happened in the past. The thing I realized when I started going on this journey into foster to adopt was that in my first marriage, I have grown children, but I had an agreement with my ex-wife, and to some entrepreneurs, it may sound familiar because we really do justify working a lot. Like we justify that it's important for us to work a lot. So I had this agreement with my ex-wife that gave me the freedom to work a lot. And I did. And I worked from home, and yet no one in the family ever really saw me because I was always in my office. I was always in meetings. And what I agreed to with my ex-wife, which I highly do not recommend, if you have a relationship and you make this agreement, reconsider it. Because what the agreement did was it said that my ex-wife, who was my wife at the time, like we were actually together in a happy marriage at the time, would take care of the house and the kids, and I would be responsible for making money. And that worked out great, except There were certainly times when my ex-wife didn't feel supported. There were times when I wasn't there for my kids. And when they were really small, like you're changing poopy diapers small, and I wasn't there to do that, the bond that you get to create with a baby like that, where they're totally vulnerable to you, like that bond didn't really form in the way that I think most parents would want that bond to form. So, my wife that I'm with now, she'd never been a mom, and she's like, I really want to do that. And I'm like, yes, I would love to. And we got certified, and which took something. Like, I wish most parents today, when they were having kids, went through some of the training we went through, because like you actually learn how to be a parent.
That'd be handy.
Right. But yeah, we've got two beautiful girls that we're fostering. One of them will be reuniting with her mom, it sounds like, in the near future, and the other just came to us, and it's a beautiful experience. There's not enough of it in the world for these children. There are just so many kids that are left.
What have you learned from that, Jeff?
I've learned that it's okay for me to actually accept the love of a baby. Like, it's like I don't have to do anything for that. Just be there. It's like there's all these conditions in the rest of my life, but with a baby, there's no conditions. It's like, can you just hug me and feed me a bottle? Can you hold my hand and teach me to walk? Like, it's really pretty awesome.
Mm.
That's why I do what I do, so I can do that for them. And create the space for other parents to see what a wonderful gift this is that you get to give. Because there are really not enough people to take this on.
Wow. Are they teaching you, or are you teaching them?
It's both, right? I mean, it's such a beautiful, warm, like, it's this great big hug. I mean, my 15-month-old, she came to us, and she couldn't, at 8 months, she couldn't roll over, she couldn't sit up, she couldn't crawl. And, we're almost 8 months in, and she's now almost walking on her own. She's just the happiest little munchkin that anybody could have. And I'm so grateful to be able to be dad to her for now.
Sure.
And it really has fulfilled me. And listen, I'm a generation before you. You're a little younger than me. Most guys my age don't actually jump in, but there's an author that I met, and he and I are friendly. His name's Jeffrey Gitomer, and at 63, he had a 3-year-old that I met in a conference. I'm like, Jeffrey, like, what's that like? He goes, it's the greatest thing in the world. You should do it. So I did.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a whole experience, isn't it, really? Like anything.
It is. It's a great experience. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity not just to make a difference in the world, but where I actually get the chance to look back at my life and say, my kids who are now 25 and 30 say, Dad, there was nothing wrong. We did fine. Look at us. And they're great guys. Like, there's nothing wrong. And what they don't have the experience of is when I was their age and had them as babies, I didn't do all the things I'm doing now. And I get to live my life knowing that I got that.
Mm. Yeah.
And it's okay. It's really okay to do some of that for me. Like, I don't have to say I'm just doing it for them to be good to them. I can say, no, I'm doing it for me. It actually, it's made a difference in my healing some of the scars that I've had from my past. And if you read my book, you get to read all about the scars, because in my opinion, you know, I could tell you about all the great things I've done and all the success I've had and all that. But when I tell you about all the crap, when I tell you about all the things that didn't work, when I tell you about the times I failed, which, by the way, outnumber the times I've succeeded 2 or 3 to 1. When I tell you about all that, and then you get like, well, what did I do next? And how did all that happen? You can see that, like, there's a lesson you get. There's something that you can take away, and maybe some action you could take right now to forward your life and help you do something that you want to do, especially if you want to have a business and a life.
Mm. Do you see that contrast? Does it bring a bigger opportunity, do you think? So I mean, almost the kind of the worse things get, the harder they are, the deeper the hole that you find yourself in. Saying, well, that actually is beautiful, because, you know, in terms of, you know, sort of having a polar opposite, it gives you the opportunity to have a high that's so much higher, because you will appreciate it, and you will, you know, you will chase it because you know what the lowest low is like. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. So the answer is maybe. I think it's really about how you view you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've done a lot of work to look into myself and what I've done, how I've hurt people, repair relationships. Like, you know, I talk about my kids and my ex-wife. Well, look, I got divorced. My kids wouldn't talk to me for 2 years. It sucked. My ex-wife was really hurt. You know, I mean, it was not fun. And you know, all I can say is I was not the same person I am today. I had gone through a really big bout of depression. You know, to know me and my journey is just to know I've had some enormous success and some bigger failure. And, you know, I'll give you a couple of examples. I had a software company I started in the early 2000s. We grew from 0 to about 50 people in 2 years. We were pushing an 8-figure revenue ramp. We were really doing it, you know? I mean, this company was my dream. We were all of our clients were like Kaiser Permanente, State of California, Wells Fargo, B of A, Lockheed Martin. We had 100 of those. Okay. So what happened? 2007, there was this little financial crisis. Some people might remember. You're too young for that.
I was in the middle of it with a lump of property, so I know all about it.
Right. So then, you know, like, there was a 6-month period that year that we had contracts from all of our clients renewing. And so we went out and talked to them like we always did. And they said, Jeff, we love you guys. You're fired. Every single one. It was this period of like a controlled crash. Like, you know, you're going to crash. You know it's going to be bad. You're in the car and you're on the freeway, and the slowest you can get is 50 miles an hour. It's not pretty, right? That was us. The things that came out of it for me were, I helped everybody in the company get other jobs, even my partners. But what it did was it left me closing down a company all by myself. And guess what? It was that being all by myself then that I noticed today was the way I ran the company. You see, I never actually had it that I could trust other people. I had it that if I wasn't the most important person in the company, my company wouldn't operate. Boy, I'm telling you, it's taken 20 years.
Wow.
But the thing I work with business owners and CEOs on today is making sure they're not the most important person in the business. And in doing that, it actually creates something just spectacular for these people. And Pete, just imagine you have a business, right? And you go on vacation with your family for 2 weeks. By the way, that's probably unique for a lot of business owners to actually take a 2-week vacation. But let's say for a minute, you decide you're going to do that, but you're the most important person in the company. So you actually go on vacation with your laptop, with your phone, with any other device you need, right? Mm-hmm. And you're working 2 to 4 hours a day. By the way, in the middle of pool time with your kids. What kind of vacation is that? You know, where's the opportunity to really have that solid relationship you want with your daughter or with your son, or God forbid, with your spouse or girlfriend? Right? How do you actually, like, people forgive that stuff all the time because it's for the business. Well, when you have a business failure, all of that extra work that you did, it was for naught. And then you still have impacted relationships with your family. You know, people say family first all the time, and then they go and do something else. So there's an integrity gap there. We should put family first, but then I'm going to go do some work while I'm on vacation. It's not actually family first. There's an important meeting no one else can cover for me. Come on. Let's get real for a minute. Let's really seriously look at how we can have a business that's successful, that gives you the opportunity to fulfill on all the dreams you have for you and your family. And remember that 10 years from now, when they're teenagers, 20 years from now, when they have families, they're going to be modeling your behaviors. So you want them on vacation with you when they're 15? You actually want them to spend some time with you at that age? Do it with them when they're 5. Like, really do it with them when they're 5. And then also set yourself up so that someday, if you choose to sell your business or move on, you've left things well managed, and you don't have to have a 5-year earnout, which, by the way, most people never actually see all the money when that happens. So, you know, I've really gotten to where I advocate for having a life and a business and having them both work. It happens by having a great team of people that you know you can count on. And I have a way of doing that. I actually created it.
Wow. Talk to us about your book. Give us a proper introduction then.
So I've always had it in my head I could write a book. I know you're a writer. You may have had that for a little bit too. But I actually kept starting chapters, and then they just laid there on my computer, and then they didn't mean anything because they weren't attached. So what I've done in the last 10 years is I developed a process that takes business environments and shift them from the old way that things work where people are being held accountable. You know, when the boss says to you, hey, Pete, I need you to do this. And you know, if you say no, there's going to be some kind of a penalty somewhere. So you say yes. You don't really feel like doing it. And like my cousin said to me when I was sharing with her a little about this, she said, oh, yeah, like the job that I'll always say yes to and then never do because I hate it. But I only say yes to it because there's less of a punishment if I say yes than if I say no and don't do it. If I just don't do it, it goes away. But if I say no and don't do it, then there's a problem. So I said, yes, that's exactly right. This is a new way of doing it. So you think about the word accountable, and most people hear it on the news every night. It's usually about a criminal or a politician, right? You look at the news in the US today, and you know, they're all trying to hold Donald Trump accountable for January 6th, right? And then you look at, you know, all the shootings and they're trying to hold the shooters accountable. And then you go to work and your boss is trying to hold you accountable. And it doesn't actually feel good. It kind of feels like someone's holding a gun to your head, like you're being held accountable for something that maybe you hate doing, maybe you're not good at, maybe you just have no strengths in that area, you know? And by the way, business owners do this all the time. They just do. So I created a process that eliminates the restrictive nature of being held accountable and creates an empowering environment, starting with the CEO or business owner or executive, that they can now get their team trained and developed in so that they can be something different than accountable. They can be count-onable. So what count-onable is it's an empowering mechanism that gives people the ability to comfortably say, hey, Pete, you can count on me when we do a meeting, I'm going to be on time. Hey, Pete, when we go to that meeting, you can count on me to participate and make sure that if I hear something that's off, you know that. Hey, Pete, I'm not doing the laundry. Find someone else for that. That's not my bag. I'm not good at it. I hate doing it. It will stack up and you'll be pissed at me. Like, just imagine you have an environment where people stand up and they take pride in the stuff that they're doing and want to do. And they also take pride in being able to know, and for you to know what's not workable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I'm curious, what are the values of somebody who is count-onable? I mean, you talked about there someone who's passionate or somebody, you know, is you know, empowered by their work. I mean, are they traditional, are they typical values that you would expect to see?
So there are traits that you'll see, but the number one thing is for people actually to have the confidence to be empowered to say no. And you know where that comes from, Pete, right? It's the leader. And notice I didn't say boss. You know, it's a great book by Gino Wickman. He's written several I really like Traction, about the entrepreneur operating system. He's written How to Be a Better Boss. In that particular book, he spends the first part talking about how respectful of a term the word boss is. Now, it may be in some parts of the world, but where I live, you know, I hear, are you bossing me around, or you're trying to boss me around? Like, it's never used in a positive light, you know? So, well, by the way, his books have some amazing information and I highly recommend them. It's just, those books, plus most of the other great business books I've read, come from a perspective of you have to make your team be accountable. So there's a few things wrong in that sentence that I just said. You have to is restrictive. Make, very restrictive. Accountable, no one wants it. So you've really got to shift that whole culture. The good news is I came up with a way of doing it, which is fun and empowering and takes the stigma out of accountability. And that's why I came up with the term countable, which before I bought the URL had only been used 6 times in my Google search on the internet. That was it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can buy that URL? So it's a shift in the mindset. It's a shift in the way you operate. And by the way, I call it a practical guide, and you can see that it says it right there on the cover, because it's actually the blueprint and the roadmap to go from an organization that's accountable to one where people start taking pride in their work and taking ownership of the tasks they know that they have strengths in, that they're good at, and that they love doing. And for you as a leader, what it does for you is it gives you a mechanism where you're always on top of the shifts in people. So I've packed a lot in there, Pete. I just want to check in. Like, is there anything that you want to share about that, or any comments?
No, I think there's a lot there, as you say. I kind of get a reflection of what is it, The 1 Minute Manager by Spencer Johnson, I think it is as well. You know, that's
Brian Tracy. No, not Brian Tracy. Anyway, go on.
Yeah, but you know who I mean. I think, is it Spencer?
I know the 1 Minute Manager. Yeah.
So, but it's that sort of, I like that in terms of, you know, it's sort of empowering the employee more, but it's, you know, and I'm seeing where I can understand the countable aspect of it. I think is clever, right? Because it's more than empowerment, if I'm understanding this correctly. It's empowerment, but also a team player. They're taking corporate responsibility, they're taking pride, they're taking all these things, as opposed to just going, yeah, I trust that you're going to do the things that I've told you to do, please.
Yeah. Well, and it's really great to hear you get that. And it's also like, if you're in HR and you're advising your CEO, like, how do we reduce turnover, right? Or if you're, you know, the COO and you're focusing on operations and productivity, and you've got all of those people that you're looking at, or you're the CRO or VP of sales and you're looking like, how do I know I can count on these guys to come through with the numbers, right? What's often missing in all of that is, you know, there's a time to put some heat on something. It's just, as the leader of whatever group you're in, it's your opportunity to identify when to use the carrot and when to use the stick. And the fact of the matter is you really don't need a stick if you're a count-onable company. Because if you have to use a stick, what it means is that your people are not aligned well for the roles you need them in. And you're forcing them to do something unnatural to them. And there are a lot of reasons you do it. The biggest one usually is there's no one else to do the laundry, and you need Pete to do the laundry. So I'm going to come down on Pete the way my wife does with me and say, Pete, I need you to wash the dishes today, and once you use a clockwise scrub, because that's the only way the dirt comes. If you use counterclockwise, that doesn't work, right? Now, I've gone just with that example beyond pushing something you don't want to do on you, and now I'm micromanaging it. Well, we do that stuff all the time, and there's nothing that works about it. People leave companies over that stuff. And today they're doing it in droves. So how do you go from that to an environment where people are anxious to work for you because you're one of the best companies around? Why? Because you've aligned your people with the things they do best that help you, the CEO, get done what's important to you. And when you notice that there's a shift in the way those people are operating, which, by the way, is very frequent when you use the count-onable method, you're able to identify when they want something more fulfilling or a new set of responsibilities. And you can preempt and be proactive about what's missing for them. Because let's face it, you might take someone from sales that's not performing well and just say, well, I'm going to get them out. But you haven't actually maybe looked to see, is there another set of skills they have where they can fill something else in the company? Because they have a lot of company culture and a lot of those valuable jewels of information up here that if you can continue to harness those, what would that be like for your company? And then what does that tell all of your other employees, like when they're ready to do something where they get more responsibility or less responsibility or whatever? That's a place people want to work. And unfortunately, it just doesn't happen very frequently.
Well, what would you expect the sort of the mission statement or the values or maybe the ethos of a company that has applied this? You know, what would you expect to see?
So that's really easy because it's one where I'm going to use a term. It might trigger some people. So get ready. You might get triggered. If you do, let it happen and then come back to us, okay? Maybe hit the rewind button. As a leader, if you really want the trust of your people and you want to trust them, like if you really want to be able to trust that your people are being straight with you and you want to trust that they're getting the stuff done that they're assigned, and you want to just have a generally good trust relationship and know they're aligned with what you want to have done. The world's changed, guys. You can't boss people around. They actually want to know that you are for real. They want to know that if a knife cuts you, your blood is red. And that when you put a Band-Aid on, it's going to take a week to heal. They want to know that you're going to be open to saying to them, hey, I just made a mistake and I cut myself. The problem is that most of us want to look good. So we never tell anybody when we cut our finger. We just put the Band-Aid on and say, oh, is that the color of my skin? Or maybe I should wear a glove. We cover it up. Guys, if you really want to build the strongest relationship possible where your people will always want to be on your team and be leaders, that you teach how to lead and they teach how other people can lead in your environment, if you want that and you want to have the freedom to know that you can take a vacation and someone has your back at the office, at work, okay, you ready? Here's the word. You're sitting, Pete, I know, so that's good. You've got to be vulnerable. Remember I talked about changing diapers and the baby being vulnerable? That's you. You have to let your people flourish. You've got to set the environment up where when you are vulnerable with them and you can tell them something about you that's embarrassing, that you did wrong and you're owning it, Like, how many times, Pete, have you heard someone say, I wish my employees had an ownership mindset? All the time, right? Like, people will say, oh, God, I wish they had an ownership mindset. If they only had an ownership mindset. But you're the owner. You're the CEO. You're the executive in charge. They only get to have what you give them permission to have. Because if you don't give some people permission, they're not going to just take it on. They're going to wait for the signal that it's okay. Do you know how they get the signal? They get it when you say, damn, I messed up. I am so sorry. Pete, that was your job, and I totally did it because I do that stuff, and I'm sorry. I own that I did it. In the future, I promise, I will make sure to hand it off to you because I know you'll do a great job at it. After all, that's why I hired you. Again, when you're the most important person in the company, you disempower your people by taking the stuff you hired them to do away and ask them to wash the laundry. And sometimes, Pete, executives and managers will preempt the opportunity to take something away from someone. And in the hiring process, they'll do it. And it goes something like this. Pete, I think you're amazing for this job. We want you. I just need to know, we have a couple of things that are kind of open on our team. Can you wash the laundry for us? Pete, you're about to get the job offer. What are you going to say? It's right there. You're about to get it. Okay. You might qualify. You might say, well, not really very good at the laundry. I mix the whites and the colors. You might say, yeah, I've screwed up and put bleach in at the wrong time. It's ruined everything. You sure you really want me to do that? You might say those things. Odds are you're going to say, sure, I can do it. Where's the offer? Now, when that happens as a leader, you've just broken your cardinal rule. Because generally speaking, your cardinal rule is hire A players to do the job. I want the best person. I've just interviewed 12 people. This is the best one. This is the A player for this job. And you gave them a B job. And now they're going to start disappointing you from day one. Probably. Maybe not. You really want to do that to them? You really want to put them in a position where they're supposed to do something that they really weren't interviewing for? They really, really didn't plan to be the laundry guy? Or do you want to maybe take all of the tasks like doing the laundry, doing the dishes, mopping the floor, cleaning the bathtub, and create a job description? Because if you do that, I promise you're going to find someone that loves doing those things. Loves it. And by the way, that'll be their perfect job. Like, that'll be their dream job. I get to do the dishes and the laundry. Oh my God, that's exactly what I want to do. By the way, they'll do that for a lot less money than the person that you have putting financial reports together or selling. So, that's often missing. We hire people and we don't know what their strengths are. I have an easy way of figuring that out. We bring them on and we don't know when they start faltering because they're not delivering on a promise they made, because we're busy managing them, not their promise. I want to actually repeat that because it's really an important concept. So you can manage people. If you're a people manager, I'm sure you can manage people. Now, the result of managing those people, well, you know what your turnover is. You know the quality of the work they're doing. You know whether they're thinking about you like a micromanager or not. You know all of those things. What if, though, you flipped it? Instead of managing people, what if you'd manage a promise? Pete, I promise I'll be on time to all of our meetings. If not, I promise I will text you or call you to let you know if I'm going to be late. Pete, I promise I'm going to call 50 people a day and generate X number of sales from that. And if it doesn't look like that's happening, we're going to talk about it. But those are promises. Now you have a promise, you get to verify it. So, a big part of the process is a regular weekly check-in where you have this priority action list, which has all of the promises on it with a due date. If the due date is next week and it hasn't been started yet, there's some things you can check in on and see. So just imagine like you got this list of things that are all priorities that all map to the priorities that the leadership team has, that the CEO has. And they have due dates on them. And something's not being done. It's just not being prioritized. Or the person doesn't have time. Or whatever the reason is, I don't care. I really don't care about the reason. I just want the job done. You ever heard anyone say that, Pete? Yeah, right?
Too much, unfortunately.
Okay. So, but that's what happens when you're trying to manage people. When you're managing the promise, you can just say, oh, it's not complete yet. And now you can be curious. So that's really important, is the opportunity to be curious with people. Like, what if instead of coming down on someone, you were just able to say to them, hey, Jeff, I'm curious, is there something going on that would have you not complete this by next week? Well, yeah, we just took on a 3-year-old foster child. I think I could use some help this week. Oh, wow, yes. But if it's not on that list and you don't check in with me every week, how do you know I might need some help with some things? Right? But a promise, managing promises and not people, is fundamental to having people be empowered. Because whenever you manage a person, you've just become a micromanager. You might not think of yourself that way, but they do. And when they do, and even if you don't, you are. Because guess what? All of the people they talk to about you are going to know you're micromanaging them. So you might not think of yourself as a micromanager. It's kind of like the word accountable. It's a good word. It has a great meaning. It's just being used in a way that's more like a trigger than an empowering word. So the whole point to being countable is remove the triggers, put people in a position where they can take ownership, trust them, but also then verify. So I know I've kind of been ranting here for a while, Pete, and you're such a generous listener. I'm so grateful. I'm just watching your head nod with smiles, and like I'm getting a sense that you've lived some of these experiences. Can you maybe shed some light on that?
Yeah, I suppose I'm smiling because I'm the synergy or the overlap of being a foster parent, and being a foster host is so similar in many ways to being a manager. It's like, you know, you don't know how long they're with you. You're there to care and do the best that you can do and things like that. And I mean, ironically, you're probably better trained than most parents, So I know when we got handed a child in the hospital, and it's like, good luck. It's like,
Here you go.
which is the same with most managers. I don't know. I mean, I don't know the statistics, but I know regularly in corporate world, I found it's like, we're going to promote you up. And it's like, so because we need somebody to be there. It's not that necessarily because you're ready or you've done the right amount of training. It's like, we've got a slot, or we have a project and we need to give you a bigger title. Oh, and by the way, you're going to manage somebody. And it's like, what? I've never done that, or I've never done anything this. It's like, don't worry, you'll work it out as you go along. You'll be grand. And it's that sort of mentality that actually is dangerous, because, ultimately you're sort of going, I mean well, I really want to do the best for you, but frankly, I'm not trained for this. So the structure and the backup and the resources just aren't there, right? So I mean, the synergy between fostering and managing, I think, is probably is quite close. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it's interesting that you bring that up, because I often think about that. It's great. Early in my career, I started noticing the salespeople that got promoted to be sales managers were not the best managers. They were the best salespeople. And oftentimes they'd get promoted, but they were just put in the job. There was not like a training. So suddenly they were replacing their entire sales team. Why? Because no one wants to work with a manager that pulls them off of deals so that they can close the deal. Because the manager is frustrated that deals aren't being closed fast enough. No one wants to be in the environment where their manager is taking their job over. They want to be in the environment where the manager helps them learn to walk. You don't just start walking like my 15-month-old, right? She couldn't crawl. She couldn't roll over. So she learned how to roll over. Now, let me show you how to put one knee in front of the other and one hand in front of the other. Okay, good. Now let me show you how to stand up. But we don't always do that. Now, there are some great companies that do. Don't get me wrong. I mean, a lot of companies invest very heavily in leadership training. They have very well-defined processes for management. It's the old method. It's the old accountability method. It's like EOS and scaling up are great systems. I mean, my hats are off to Vern Harnish and to Gino Wickman, and there are other systems out there I highly respect also. It's just they still come about it from a 20-year-ago mentality. And that doesn't work today. Millennials that are in the workforce, they want to be able to have a life. Things are not important to them in the same way that they were important to me or to you. So, not that I'm not calling you a millennial, Pete, because you look really young, but I'm just saying. But that's the reality, isn't it? We have a really huge opportunity here. There's a movement I'm creating to shift the philosophy of accountability to one where people are accountable. And, I've done it with 300 companies. It's not difficult. It's well defined. In fact, I patented the process and then I published it. It's right here, every step. It's right here. You can read the book, you could do it yourself. I only patented it so that way no one else claims it. But as far as I'm concerned, it is open source. I invite people to do what it is that they see fit, take bits and pieces out of it, because it's easy steps. And by the way, I hate to say this because, again, some people might get triggered, but there is just nothing new to create in the world. However, there's a different way to put things together today than there was yesterday. And when I wrote the Countable book, I took accountability and I broke it apart, and then I turned it on its side. And if you just remove 4 letters from the word accountable and put 2 letters in for countable, you got it. It's not that big of a shift in the things you do. It's when do you do them? Why do you do them? People want to know why. Why do you do them? And the most important one is, how do you do them? Like, how do you actually have a verifying meeting with someone? What do you say so that you don't trigger them? Pete, you ever been in a meeting with someone where they've been triggered and then they start giving you a big, long explanation about why, where, and when, and how?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You've either got answers or reasons.
Exactly. So, by the way, I am the best reason maker that you will ever find. I promise. If you trigger me, I will waste at least 10 or 20 minutes of your time, maybe a half hour. But I promise you will know why, and you won't give a crap. Because all you wanted to know is, am I committed to getting it done? When might you see it? Should I find someone else to do it? The problem is that most people just aren't trained in watching for those triggers. So they trigger people, and then they're nice and listen to the reasons. People don't always get, like, you can have a straight conversation with someone and still be nice. You can look someone in the eye and say, look, Pete, I totally get it. There's a lot of reasons why. In a minute, can you just tell me, are you committed to doing this? If you're not, tell me that. If you are, tell me by when you're going to have it done. If you just do those 2 things, we will both be extraordinarily happy. I promise. But most people are nice and they sit there and they waste a half hour. Then they go to the next employee and they have the same exact conversation. Now it's an hour. Heck, most managers have, between 4 and 8 employees that they manage. You really want to do that 8 times? How many hours a week do you want to waste? It's the only thing you really have control over is your time and how you use it. But you also don't want to trigger your people and leave them with, oh my gosh, I'm in trouble. I totally messed up. Do I need to look for a job? Because you trigger them enough or you cut them off enough because they're giving you reasons, eventually they're going to wonder if they're in the right job. Is this the right boss? Should I be looking to do something else?
What's your take on the current situation? Obviously, we talked about the Great Resignation and that aspect. I mean, is that an elastic situation? Are we going to snap back to the way it was? People will, sort of just forget and go back to it. There'll be a bit of, be a 5%, 10% attrition and movement between jobs, and everyone gets back to what they were doing? Or do you think there is permanent change here? Has permanent change been triggered?
We run in cycles in this world. right? There's going to come a time maybe in the future where people want to operate the way they operated in 1980. It's not today. And it's going to be a whole different generation that creates that. And guess what they're going to be creating it from? They're going to be creating it from nothing, because they didn't live in 1980. They had no idea what doing business back then was like. They're just going to create, and they're going to say, oh, this is the new way to manage. Just like I'm saying, this is the new way to be accountable, right? So when is it going to happen? Sometime between now and the year 3000, right? I'm not going to be living that long. I'm not sure I'd want to, but I'm sure I'm not going to be living that long. But what I can tell you, Pete, is people deserve the opportunity to be respected. They deserve the opportunity to be able to own their power. Like, where can I be powerful in this situation? Where can I show my boss I have an ownership mentality, right? Again, boss, right? Not leader, boss, because the boss wants to see that you have an ownership mentality. They're always telling you, why can't you just have an ownership mentality? So I think it's going to be a long time. Short answer, not in my lifetime.
What I was going to say, I mean, for people to go through, I mean, is there, does this take time, do you think? Obviously there's the reading of the book, but then the implementation, etc. I mean, do you have a recommended timescale or a blueprint for them to follow, and sort of saying, listen, this may take X amount of time or X amount of effort or input or whatever? I mean, is there a path that people follow?
Absolutely. So first off, I just want to start by telling everybody that in the early 2000s, the software company I had was called Process Exchange. And we helped Fortune 500 Global 2000 accounts implement agile software development process at the very beginning of it. So what agile really is it's incremental. And what I learned from my team of experts, because I was not the expert, I was the CEO and founder, right? But what I learned from my guys and my partner who wrote a book on it was, you just take small bites. It's like, how do you eat an elephant? You take a bite at a time. Well, I noticed that those concepts could be applied to management. And so a lot of the work that we did with big companies, I figured out how big companies can use this in managing their businesses and how small companies could also do that. It's incremental work. So what I've created is a 90-day structure, and then you repeat the 90 days and you get a maturity level that starts growing in your organization. And when you see the things that we're looking for in the development process of what you'll do, what you'll see is, well, at first, we create what I call as a game plan. What's a game plan? It's what most people would call their business plan. It's just, when you call it a business plan, it's not nearly as much fun as when you call it a game plan. So just so you know, I'm a big advocate of fun. If it's not fun, I'm not really wanting to do it. So I call it a game plan. You want to call it something else, go right ahead. But inside of that game plan, there are some really important things you want to keep an eye on. Like, for example, people talk about making, big goals, right? What are your really big goals? But when are those goals going to be achieved? In my lifetime. Okay, great. Go ahead. You can say whatever you want. I want to be $1 trillion company. Awesome. Okay, now that that's out of the way, what are some business objectives that you have? Right? And that would be like 1 to 3 years out. Like, I want to be, 100 people, or I want to be 1,000 people, or I want to have, $10 million of revenue, whatever that looks like, right? Okay, great. Now that you have that, what is it that we're going to focus on in 90 days that will move us substantially toward that objective? And we unfold it. Most people start at the bottom of the staircase and they walk up the first flight of stairs, and those are all the goals that they were going for. And they can see them from the bottom of the staircase. No problem. Now they've hit that plateau and they see the goals for the next staircase, and now they're going for those. It's just when you do that, getting to that really big dream that you have, never going to happen. So what I advocate is that you go straight to the roof of the building, where you've got a 360-degree view, and you can see what it looks like. And now you know. And that's 90 days. And then you walk down one flight of stairs, you're no longer on the roof. It's just, you know what that view looks like. Now you're a lot clearer on where you need to be to achieve the goals you have for 90 days. So you say in 60 days, we will have achieved this. And you walk down one more flight of stairs. And now you're listing the goals for 30 days. Do you get, Pete, does that make sense, the working backward?
It does. It does. And I think I get it. I mean, I suppose with my own clients there, and I'm always nervous when people set their goals almost based dry. The problem is you have a very high risk of inheriting your next door neighbors. Oh, I heard somebody saying there, if I had this, that's my goal. My goal is what they said plus a little bit. That's my goal. And you go,
right.
That's not your goal. It's like that. Whereas if you can future visualization based goals, you go in, for me, it's like I said, it's visualization. It's going into what's capable, what's meaningful, what's there. Is this what you want? Because it's come from within you. It's come from within your visualization, your imagination, etc. And I said, yeah, that's what we want. Okay, that's the mission. That's the vision. SpaceX, we're going to Mars. That's the company vision.
Right.
Far enough 50 rockets here, there, and everywhere. Why? Because they're going for the big one.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, let's face it. He's got more money than anyone else, so he can do that.
Sure.
Most of us have some resource constraints, so we're actually not aiming for Mars. We just want to get off the ground so that I can go from Los Angeles to San Francisco. That's it. I just want to go those 500 miles. However, if you don't own the plane, we got to come up with something else.
In your experience, what do CEOs want? And part two of that is, what should they want?
So I'm going to answer part two first. There's no shoulding. Don't should on people, okay? Like, you should this, you should that. That's someone else. Stop that. It's not the place you want to be. So the place you want, by the way, that's totally disempowering, is when you should, right? So what you really want is, you want to come from a place of being empowered, right? And what that looks like to me is maybe different than for you, but what most CEOs want depends on their personal goals, right? So there might be somebody that's just starting out and they want to have $1 billion company. By the way, that's the big goal that maybe someday could be reached somehow. Mine is that in my lifetime, 100,000 companies take on being countable. That's a big goal, right? It's also a lifetime dream. It's not something I can actually plan toward. But I can plan 100 companies taking this on, 1,000 companies taking it on, right? I can plan that. So what people want and what they are capable of getting is an enormous mismatch. Very big mismatch. Because in general, people are really poor at forecasting. And so, you know, I could give you my crystal ball. I promise my crystal ball hits 90% of the time. But that only happens because I know what I want in 90 days. I know what I want in 60 days. And I know what I want in 30 days. And by the way, when I'm in that first 30 days and I see at the end of 30 days that I said I was going to do 100, but I only have 50, I now have an opportunity to rethink the 500 that I declared for 90 days. And I can revoke it, which, by the way, is very empowering, right? Because you actually have to look at, like, is this a goal or is it a dream? You have to look at, do I have enough time? Do I have enough people? Is there enough money? Are there any other resources that I need that I might not have? You have to look at those things. It's just what happens most of the time is someone at the top level says, we're going to do X. Okay, Jeff, you're the VP of sales, go do that. But what about HR? What about finance? What about marketing? Like, what are they going to do to help me increase sales to X? Well, that's not their job. That's your job. But I need to hire people. Do we have the budget to hire people? I need to train people. Who's going to do that? Do we have the budget for that? You know, the point is we don't always know. And we don't always know what we don't always know. Right? So then we set people up to go do jobs that align with what you want done, but the rest of the team is not on the same page. And I know you're in Scotland, but here in Los Angeles, we have the 10 freeway and the 5 freeway and the 405 freeway and the 60 and the 91. And what I just described to you is a CEO with a leadership team in 5 different cars on 5 different freeways. And they're all going to get where they're going really, really fast. But they're all doing different things. So how are you going to get what you want as CEO? It's the alignment problem. So we came up with a really easy way to align teams and empower them to align their teams, and empower them, if you've got multiple layers of management, to align their teams. So when the CEO says we're going to increase sales by 20%, now there's a game plan for sales. There's a game plan for HR. There's a game plan for marketing. There's a game plan for finance. There's a game plan for legal. Like, who else do we need to have a game plan that lines up? And we're actually able to have a cohesive team working together. And by the way, people love their jobs because they're doing the job that they have strengths at, are good at, and love doing. And you know that they're getting it done, because every week you're meeting with them and just checking in, like a quick check-in meeting. Could be like 15 minutes, but you're doing it. They know there's like, oh, every week I have to answer these same questions, or there might be new questions that come up. So they're ready for it. And they don't get your phone call at 4 o'clock on Friday, right before the long weekend, saying, hey, you promised me that deliverable. Where is it? And it was the thing you didn't care about, so you didn't do. So you beat yourself up all weekend because you're trying to figure out how do you make your boss happy again. Or better yet, you wind up working all weekend on the thing you hate doing, so there's your time with your family, just poof, gone to the wind.
How does this transfer for people in their own personal lives then? I mean, does it dovetail? So I mean, it's rather than being purely on the business side, but it's actually saying, be, accountable for your own personal vision, your own personal missions, and it should hopefully dovetail with the companies as well. If you're in the right environment, right? Do the two? Can you run them sort of in parallel as such?
It's not even about running them in parallel. It's I think, like I said, I've been very well trained and developed in communication. I've taken a lot of programs. I took a 2-year leadership program about building and managing teams. And I learned that every time I did something like that for the business, I picked something up for myself. I'm going to tell you a short story. You're so generous and you're just letting me talk. So I'm grateful, and I hope everybody is getting something from this, not just, music to sleep by. But this is a story about my personal life in the last 6 months. And it only happened because I've done all of this work, but you don't have to do a lot of work for this to happen. So my foster daughter, when she was about 1 year old, couldn't walk. She was just barely getting up and standing. My wife and I went out of town to some friends to stay with them for the weekend. They have a 7-year-old. And one of the nights, my wife and her friend went to an event together for work. So my friend and I took the 2 girls and in the wagon, and it was super cute. The 7-year-old was busy mommying the 1-year-old, right? And we got to dinner, great dinner. After dinner, got back in the wagon, and we're off to frozen yogurt for dessert a block away. As we're kind of walking up to the frozen yogurt shop, I turned around and I saw my 1-year-old in tears. She was standing up, holding the side of the wagon, and she was just scared. And I had my friend stop, and I went over and picked her up and calmed her down. Then I put her back in the wagon, and I turned to the 7-year-old. Now, just imagine these were employees of yours. Pick a situation, right? And I said to the 7-year-old, I said, hey, I'm just curious. Did you notice that she was standing up and crying? She said, yes, I told you. I said, wow. I said, I didn't hear you. I asked her, I said, could I ask you a favor? She's looking at me. She says, sure, what? I said, if she starts crying or gets scared and you tell me something, can you make sure I answer you back before you go back to playing your video game? And she said the 2 words that we use rampantly today. Got it. She got it. I should be dancing and jumping for joy, right? She got it. Instead, I decided I was going to be curious. Now, this is something I do with people I work with all the time, because everybody has a different definition of effective communication. For some people, got it is enough. She got it. We're good. No problem. I said to her, hey, by the way, she had dropped her head back down and started thumbing away at the keyboard for her game again. I said to her, hey, I'm just curious, honey. What'd you get? And her fingers stopped moving. She's still looking at the game. 5 seconds goes by. 10 seconds goes by. 15 seconds hit, and she lifts her head up. And she said, I should make sure I hear you answer me when I tell you something's wrong. She got it. She really got it. It meant so much to me that she got it. Because that little darling is so precious. But here's the thing that I want you to get out of that story. It's part 2. We went back to visit our friends about a month later. And the 7-year-old came over to me and said, can I take the baby over to play with my friends? And I said to her, I said, do you remember the conversation we had in the wagon? She said, you mean the one where you asked me to make sure that I heard you if I call for you? I said, yeah, that one. She goes, I'll do that. I mean, come on. That's getting it. That's a 7-year-old. Imagine that you're working with your people and you have a way to lock in the request, where their version of getting it really is getting it. That would be pretty powerful for most people, don't you think?
It's one of the most powerful things, is it not? You know, and the reverse upsets me is when people don't. They may never. You know,
Yeah.
fire in the belly. It's like I unfortunately I think it's a select few.
Well, here's the good news. It's available to everybody.
Yeah. It is.
It's just available. It's right here. You can have it. You can have it today. If you could have it today and figure out how to have it actually work in people's lives, what's the difference that gets to make for them, for you, for your family, for their family, for your company, for every manager that you work with on the team? And it starts thinking that you're doing something for your work, but I have less arguments with my wife today. Really, seriously. She knows how to push my buttons. She's really, really good at it. She doesn't even think about my trigger. She just uses it all the time. In fact, she's gone as far as, and you can imagine how this might trigger me, saying, Jeff, I need you to be count-onable for the laundry. That's when you're using the term as a weapon, not a tool. It's just that, you know, if you treat people the way you want to be treated, life really works. It really does. It's just most people are not trained in doing that. They operate from an emotion that shows up, and their lips move before they catch it. I have one client right now that really is, they're after 4 years, they're in the process of graduating to maintenance with me. Why? Well, they stop themselves before they trigger each other. You know, I said, yeah. My wife triggers me. What does she do? She says, Jeff, why didn't you do the laundry? That word why again. And, she'll trigger me and I'll say, hey, honey, I am totally triggered right now. Can we have this conversation after I cool off? Most of the time, she's good with that. Sometimes she really just wants to have that heated discussion, so we'll do it. But, in work, in personal life, it's the same thing. You don't change as a person when you step into the office. You're the same person as you are at home.
I think there's so many leaders don't know where they're going. I know that's a mass generalization, unfortunately, but it's not having the vision. And it's like a lot of leaders, I think they're firefighting, and they're looking back at the employees and they're trying to save face, and they're not being vulnerable. They're not, without saying I'm totally lost, or I don't know how to do this, or we're out of a depth, or we don't have vision, don't have clarity. And it's just this hold up a smoke screen, and I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to notice it. The way I see it most often is they don't have a business plan that's workable. They have one for 5 years or for 10 years. And then they're operating from that like it's going to happen. And, if you use EOS or scaling up or my system, we all have you do things in increments, right? Like 90 days. Why? Because, if it's over 90 days, people tend to forget it's too far away. Frankly, 90 days is even pretty far out. What I find when I work with people to create a game plan is that the 90-day, I'll give you an example. And this is going to be a really rudimentary one, so just know that. But if I work with a CEO that says, I want my sales to be $10 million in 90 days. And then I say, okay, great. Where would you be in 60 days? They might say, well, we should be at 5 million. I say, great. So where would you be in 30 days? We ought to be at 2.5 million. Okay, great. What'd you do last quarter? Oh, we did 2.5 million. So, it's an opportunity for me then to be curious and say things like, so is there something that's going to have you quadruple your revenue in 3 months? Something I don't know about. Now, oftentimes the answer is no. And I say, okay, well, let's take a look at, do you have enough time? Is there enough money? Do you have people in the right spots? Do you have enough people? Right? And let's see what's possible. Can you really invest? Because 10 million may be possible. Like you throw $20 million at it, you might hit 10 million.
Sure.
Right? Oftentimes the constraint is, money. Well, I only have 200,000 this month or this quarter. Okay, great. So, we get to look at what's the pipeline look like? What's the team look like? Is there a new offering coming out? Are we having a new marketing campaign? How's the funnel building process? Like all of those things. And the thing is that if you're operating from 90 days and you say 10 million, and then we only did 2.5 last quarter, there's a big disconnect. And when you get to 30 days, people actually get nervous with me when they declare the 30 days because they start saying, oh my God, I have no idea how I'm going to get $2.5 million in sales in 30 days. That's craziness. That's, so we get to revise the numbers. But it's not until you do the working backwards. Because working forward, what it could look like is someone would say, well, let's see, we're going to do 500,000 this month, and next month we're going to do 750, and the month after that, we're going to do 1 million. Okay, now maybe you've done 2.5 million for the quarter. That's actually 2.25 million, right? So the fact of the matter is they have a bigger dream. It frustrates them that they have a dream, but the reality is way lower. What I've learned how to do is identify the dream and help reality catch up to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful way of looking at it. It's tying. For me, it's like working from the subconscious mind. You know, the most powerful thing that we have. You know, instead of saying, right, let's do this consciously, let's do this ego-based, right? I could, yeah, take our revenue, we'll double this month, and we'll do this, 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 and this. And the problem is, it's, well, one, that's all push mentality. That's all have to mentality. That's all, you know, sort of masculine based, you know, masculine energy, if you like, logic based, etc. Whereas when we create our future, we imagine our future, we visualize our futures. Like, how exactly we're going to get there, I'm not entirely sure, but you know, we can apply the logic to that after.
Exactly. 100%.
You know, that's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a lovely way of looking at it, and I genuinely think it's game changing when people get that.
Yeah, and you know, in the book, I made it a little bit easier for them to get it. I created this these 3 frameworks. One is the trust framework. One is the alignment framework, and the other is called the trust alignment framework. And those are really based on kind of the concept of, well, you know, you've got to have certain things in order to have trust. You have to have certain things in order to have alignment. And the reality is it's not very complicated. You don't need complicated things. You know, like, you know, for example, the trust framework says you ought to have some shared values. You know, things like, hey, if you want to insert politics in your business, just know you're going to get a lot of people that are politically focused. You'll either have people love you or hate you, because it's pretty polarizing, right? But that's a choice you get to make about your values. You need to know the ability of the resources you have. Like, are your people capable of doing the things you need them to do? But the number one thing you got to have is effective communication, because if you have those 2 things, but you're not able to communicate effectively, and by the way, I define the term effective communication in the book. So I have a definition. Everybody else has a definition. They're all different. So mine is only right for me, and if you want to be, count onable. But then for alignment, you need to have a leader's vision, right? Leaders actually got to say, hey, this is where we're going. We are going to land in Toronto, and that's our goal. And then you need to prioritize the actions. So all of the actions have some kind of priority. And then you also, surprise, surprise, have to have effective communication. Now, you can have all of those things. And when you operate from an emotional standpoint, without thinking about the outcome you want, none of those things matter, because you'll never get your outcome, ever. Because you'll be triggering people left and right. When you trigger people, they don't operate the way you want them to. There's a lot to that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's no, it's so powerful when you break it down. It is so powerful.
Yeah, so my method teaches people how to operate from a desired outcome. How to reduce the emotional impact that's occurring so that you can actually have the desired outcome. I have one client, he's a doctor. He has a whole team of people. A lot of them are doctors he works with. And we started doing this this exercise because every meeting it was seeming like he was killing someone off. So I said to him, hey, how are you going to reach your goals if like you can't work with this doctor and you can't work with that doctor and now there's a new one? Like there's always a doctor running away from him. He goes, but they disrespected me or they this or they that. I said, okay, they can. And where do you want your business to be? And can you do it without them? Or would it be better to figure out how to do it with them? Well, it'd be better to figure out how to do it with them. So I helped him learn how to stop himself before he operated emotionally without thinking about the outcome. And what started happening was text messages started coming to me. Jeff, I need to talk to you. Jeff, this thing happened. I got to call this guy back, but can we talk? Because what I said is text me when you have one of those and tell them you're going to call them right back. And he did. And he stopped, pissing people off and making them run away. And his business is thriving now. It's funny, people think business is all about sales. I think business is all about people. And by the way, I come out of a sales background.
Yeah. How much does ego come into this? I'm kind of getting this ego is going to be the one biggest distraction to this whole thing.
Well, that's where you got to decide that you're going to be vulnerable. You're going to be open. You're going to be able to tell one on yourself.
Sure.
Someone that lives ego first isn't going to do that. They're not right for this program. They're going to continue to boss people around. Unless they're committed to being different. I have one client that is really headstrong. He's got a great ego. It's healthy. It's great. But he and his partner were butting heads all the time. We use this method. Now they're the guys I was telling you about are on the path to maintenance. Because he's learned, some people learn it in 3 months. Some people learn it in 5 years. For him, it's 4 years. He's learned how to actually have it work. And he was committed to that. It's all about what you're committed to. When you get committed to something, you'll find a way to learn it or do it or whatever it is.
Game changing.
Yeah. So, Pete, we've talked about a lot of stuff, and I'm really grateful. You've been really gracious. It's been all me. And I know you said that it was going to be all me, so I took it on. But I actually want some feedback from you. Like, what does this sound like to you?
To me, it's music to my ears. Like I say, I mean, it's to me, fire in the belly, and is it's not as common as I would love it to be. I think, which breaks my heart. Generally, the people that go through entire life that actually never know truly what their passion is, what their purpose is, what their why is, and because it's shrouded and clouded in years of stuff, beliefs, life lessons, whatever. And I think people can go through an entire corporate career. They can go through an entire journey, an entire relationship, etc., never actually being vulnerable, never being true. And it makes me sad. So many missed opportunities. And at any point in any time, I think it's it's your choice whether you say, right, enough's enough. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be an easy choice. So I mean, I reflect sometimes, is it choice or is it acceptance? Some things in life we don't choose, but we can accept them. and I reflect and have a sort of a working principle that says, anything, the thinking, knowing comes, an outer knowing, let's say, comes from the ego. Thinking comes from the conscious mind. Feeling comes from the subconscious mind, and sensing comes from the soul. I think if we do nothing more than feel and sense, I think our world will be in a much better place. And what I hear in what you've been saying is it's feeling where you're at with your responsible leadership, feeling where you're at with responsibility for yourself. How do I sense my future? How do I sense and feel it? Don't think about it, don't know it, because that's not open language, that's closed language.
Yeah, I think you got it. I think, what I'm hearing is you notice that people have feelings and they don't have to live by their feelings. Mm-hmm. You have a choice. And yeah, people do get the opportunity to manage emotions. I'm curious, as I was talking with you about like the game plan creation, and how that goes, were you thinking about, well, actually, how do you track that? Was that kind of okay? Because I don't think we really spent any time over it. So, maybe what I can do is give you a little overview on that before we complete over here, so people have a perspective.
Please do.
Do you, again, you're probably not old enough. You probably were born, way out.
I'm 42.
Okay. So, yeah, you may not remember this. In the mid 80s, Ronald Reagan signed the SALT Accord with the then President Gorbachev, right?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
There was a speech he gave where they both got up to the podium together. Reagan looked over at Gorbachev and said, "Hey, we are going to trust you to remove these weapons. And then we're going to send teams of people in to verify they're gone." So I think that's often what's missing, is people want to trust, and then they don't have a good mechanism for verification. I did mention this tool that we have called the PAL, the Priority Action List, which aligns to the 90-day, 60 and 30-day goals. Like, those are the things that turn into the actions that we track. And what most people do is, they hand them off, and then at some point later, in an informal way, they find out things are done or not done. But with this, what it is it's a weekly touch point, and everybody that has a game plan has one of those. And that way you can look at the priority actions and determine where in the process of completion they are. And some of them are like, we're totally done. And then some of them are not. Right?
Yeah.
And every action has a due date. The templates are on the website. People can download them. We actually have some software we're creating right now where you'll be able to just use that to manage your game plan and your priority action list. But it's a very simple process. The issue I see most organizations have is they just don't have it set up as a regular process. So by making it a regular process and putting it putting people in a position where they know every week they're going to go over their priority action list, it's not a surprise. In fact, when I meet with clients, and I meet with a lot of them every week, we go over the action list almost every single week, and we do that. And what I find is, it's like, I'll log on and look at their action list a day before, an hour before, right before, and I'll see, oh, they've made some changes to this. Good, they've been on it. Why? Because they want to get that stuff done. What they just need is someone that will help them be accountable, right? So that, because, I mean, let's face it, the idea of being accountable on your own sucks.
Yeah.
But when you can have a partner to help you, that changes the game. So that's kind of how that works.
It's like basics, right? But it's so incredibly powerful. You cannot underestimate it.
It's the blocking and tackling of a business.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, sometimes we just make things too complicated.
Yeah.
You know, now we have this new thing called a computer, so it can do all kinds of calculations, and we can get apps, and oh, now there's a phone too. So we now have 18 different ways of getting the job done, when all you really need to do is take a pen and draw a line from the left side to the right side, and there's your line.
Yeah. Yeah. And
instead, what we want to do is we want to use, Word, and we want to draw a line all the way across the page, but it's got to be at a 45-degree angle. So it's not really a line. I mean, if I just go like that with a pen, that does it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's about simplification. Let's bring business back to simplification, make it easy on people, and have things work.
Yeah. Simple works. Doesn't have to be complicated. It really doesn't.
No. It really doesn't.
So tell me, if you were to try and summarize your fire in your belly, Jeff, in a couple of words, one word, couple of words, what would they be?
It's great you mentioned What's My Why from Simon Sinek. I'm reading that again right now. And I got really, really clear. Everything that I do to support people is so that children can have loving, caring homes and families and be great people in the world. I created this so I can have that for me, and you can have that for you.
Powerful. Jeff, where can people get a copy of the book? Where can they reach out? Where can they learn more about you, track you down, hunt you down, stalk you, any of the above?
All of it, everywhere, right? So Countable is available on Amazon, but there's some freebies and giveaways on our website. You can download the first chapter of the book. All of the tools that we have in the book are downloadable off our resources page. And it's available, like I said, on Amazon. The link directly to the book is on Amazon because it's a new book. You might not find it right away if you look for Jeff Cohen. So just so you know, with the 2 million Jeff Cohens out there, if you search for Countable, I promise you'll find me with it then. It's a great resource, the website. You'll be able to join some groups we have. If you're interested in contacting me, you can click the button and either get to me or someone on my team that can help answer some questions for you or understand what the journey is that you're on if you want some support. That's at countonable.com, and it's spelled COUNTONABLE.com. And I'm all over the social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, like you'll find me everywhere. Feel free to engage with me on any of those platforms. I'd love to hear your questions, get your thoughts. If you've read the book, hear if there's something that works for you or doesn't work for you, and make sure that we can be a resource.
Yeah, love it. Is there a final message you'd like to leave with our listeners today?
Yeah, there is. Stop being just accountable. Be countable.
Love it. Jeff, it's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and I thank you for sharing so much in your time and for the work you're doing and for the authoring and the fostering and everything. It's genuine leadership. So thank you for leading, and thank you for inspiring. So I appreciate you.
Hey, Pete, I am right back at you. I am grateful for what you've created. This is a fabulous format, and I really appreciate like the open environment you created, which gave me the ability to be vulnerable and, you know, shed a tear here and there too, which is not always the norm.
Yeah. It's an honor. Jeff, thank you. I appreciate you.
You bet. Thank you.